Okay, gonna do a quick demo on basic modeling navigation and extrusion here in Maya. So to start off, I'm just gonna create a simple cube here, focus in on it. If you right click on the screen and you hold right click, you have this little submenu that comes up. We have object mode, which is the default. We have vertex, which are these points right here that you can manipulate. Third, you have edges, so you can select, if you see that, the edges of the object. And then finally we have faces, where you can select the faces of the object. Secondly, we have our Transpose Tools, which you can find over here. The shortcuts are select is Q, and then move is W, rotate is E, and then scale is R. These are all in a row right on the top of the keyboard there. And so this is helpful for object mode. You can move the object around using those tools. Right click and hold right click. You can go to vertex mode, select a vertex, and then you can transpose using that tool there. And then you can also select two vertices and then scale them together like this if you want to bring in the shape. These transpose tools are useful no matter which mode you're in, whether that's object vertices or edges. So we have, and so I'm going to quickly go into the attribute editor here and add some more subdivisions on this object. So the attribute editor is here on the right. You can get there by pressing Control A. This is in the shortcuts lesson that's in the D2L. So I'm just going to add a few more subdivisions here just for this demo. And the reason I'm showing this is just a reminder where the attribute editor is. And you can go back to the modeling toolkit just by clicking that tab right there. Is an edge mode. If you want to, one thing that edges are really helpful for is selecting loops. And so if I select an edge, then hold down Shift and double click another edge, we have this edge loop here. And it's just a quick way of selecting rather than going one by one across the entire object, right? And it helps you just kind of go out and build different kinds of shapes here. This can also be done for faces. So if you right click, hold down right click, go to faces, click one, hold down Shift, double click, same thing. We got them going around in an edge loop there, which can be very helpful. So that's kind of a recap of the basic attribute editor here, where you can manipulate objects. Some of these transpose tools, which can be found over here. And then finally, the different modes that you can work in, which is object mode, vertices, right? Edges, and then faces. So moving on to the next thing here is the Extrude Tool. So the Extrude Tool is helpful for faces and edges, and it just helps you build out more geometry here. So I'll demonstrate. So I can just select one face, or I can select multiple faces. Make sure that you've don't have any strays here. So if I want to deselect this, right, I only want to extrude these faces. You hold down Control on your keyboard, this minus sign will show up on your cursor. And so you hold down Control and drag, and that'll deselect. That's going to be a helpful tool for later here. And from here, have those faces. I'm just going to press Extrude. This will come up, and then this will come up right here. And so let's pull this arrow out. And so now we have this new geometry. So that's the crux of what the extrusion tool is. But you'll also notice that up here we have this menu, which I find to be really helpful. I'm just going to enlarge it here by grabbing this orange tab down here. And if you hold your cursor, so hold your cursor right here over divisions, and then you drag left to right, you can add, if you look here, you can add subdivisions into the geometry here. And you can use this to, the offset helps scale in the extrusion some. And so these tools can be really helpful if you want more of a geometric result from things. One little quick tip here is after you just extruded, if that's the last tool that you've used, if you go back to this mode, right, the transpose mode, and you hold down shift, it'll extrude again. So if you're just working real quick and you want to make a lot of extrusions rapidly, you can just keep holding shift and dragging that out and making shapes pretty rapidly without having to go back down to this button right here every single time. But the good thing about this button here is when you do it, you get this menu here, so you just get a lot more control over what you're doing. You get those added controllers there. So you can also drag in and out there, drag in and out there. One common mistake that I see with the extrusion tool is someone will be in object mode and they'll extrude. And so when you do that, you're going to extrude out every single face on the object and something really crazy is going to happen. This geometry right here is overlapping itself, so you don't want to do that. When you're using the Extrude tool, you either want to be in face mode or edge mode. Also, one thing you'll notice here is, do you see how this geometry went from gray to black here? That means that I didn't edit undo that the mistake of extruding out the entire object, and so this model is now messed up, and we're seeing the back faces here. And you can kind of see when you zoom around close up, you'll see these artifacts and these glitches happening. And so that's if your model looks like this, that's a sign that somewhere along the way things got messed up. So I'm going to edit undo out of that and get back to here. And so again, object mode is helpful if you want to just move the whole object around, but when it comes to extruding things, and a lot of these other tools in here, not all of them, but a lot of these other tools, object mode is less helpful. So let's just do one more face extrusion here. If you press F, you'll focus in on whatever you have selected. So if you see my screen popping in, that's because I pressed F. So extrude. One thing too is you don't have to pull all the way out when you extrude. You can just go straight to offset, or press these little, drag these squares rather than the arrows. The arrows move the extrusion around, but the squares scale it in. So I've created, by doing that, I've created more geometry on the box that doesn't show up because I didn't pull it out. So it's just some extra geometry, and this can be helpful for a lot of purposes here. Let's show edges here. This is going to be helpful for creating the cyc for assignment 1. So to create the cyc in assignment 1, you press this square right up here, which is the polygon plane. I'm going to scale it up, and I'm going to just drag it off the grid just by a little bit so that it's not interfering there. If you go to the attribute editor and you click on polyplane here, sometimes you're just going to have to select through this to find what you're looking for. I'll find the subdivisions here. So for many of you, 10 subdivisions will be fine. If you want it to have a more more curvature, you actually want less subdivisions. So I'll just make a curvy one here. So I'm going to bring it down to 7. So 7 by 7. And to build this cyc, I'm going to extrude the edges both along here and here. So I'll go right click, hold right click, go into edges mode. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to hold down shift, double click, and so that's selected all the edges going around the entire plane. And so now I'm going to hold control. You see this minus sign show up on my cursor, and drag and select, and you'll see that it unselected these, which is what I want, and did it again. And so now we have all these edges selected here. I'm going to go back to the modeling toolkit. Then with these selected, I'm going to extrude, pull it up, and so now we're building a wall here for this one. And I just kind of do it by eye just to try to get things approximately proportional here, depending on how high I pull it up. So if you pull it up more, you'll need more subdivisions. The further you pull this up, the more subdivisions you'll need to match this, right? So that's looking pretty good. I'll actually bring it back down again. Again, hold the cursor over divisions, click on it. It'll change to a horizontal arrow cursor, and just drag it left to right. And you do that for all of these here. So I'll stick with that. I'll press Q to go to select or get out of the extrude mode here. Bring it back into object mode. And so now we have a little stage here with hard edges. So the next step I want to do is I want to smooth this out. And so the way to preview this is to press 3 on your keyboard. And if you press 3, you'll see the appearance changed here. Pressing 3 doesn't actually change the geometry, it just changes the preview of the geometry. So we didn't actually change anything here. We're just saying, what is this going to look like once it's smoothed, approximately. And that looks okay. I'll press 1 again, just to bring it back to normal. So again, that's 1 for this appearance, and then 3 for this appearance. If you press 4, you'll go into wireframe mode. Just a fun little extra one there. And then 5 brings you back into normal display. So all those, all the numbers across the top of your keyboard create extra shortcuts there. So, time to smooth this out. If you go up to, you can either go up to here and go to mesh and smooth right here. And sometimes you'll want the option box to customize the manner in which this smooths out. You can also find that here in the modeling toolkit. So if you press that, we'll see that things smoothed out and we have more of a gradient background here. And so this will be a helpful background. Scale this up just one more time. This will be a helpful background to stage your objects here. Just as an example, I'll just create one here. I just press spacebar to get into this orthographic view. And so I'm using the orthographic view just to line things up appropriately. You can also get to the orthographic view by pressing this button here. And then going back to the one view mode, you go up one panel here. So if you look here, we can kind of stage this in a lot of ways here.